we have a problem at the moment. I do not have any of my script in front of me. But while they take care of that, I'm going to go ahead and say good morning, and that good morning. And we're going to start off just a little differently than I have in the past. We're going to get to the presentation in just a moment. No, they're not going to bring out a guitar, and I am not going to sing. That would change educating leaders forever. And no, we don't want that. But before I begin, I want to take a couple of minutes to acknowledge all that's been happening around us the past few months and really the past few years. The world has been changing. And for some reason, for me, for you, it can feel like a whipsaw at times. The important part is we're not alone. You were just hearing from Dr. Chanel. In this role, I have the opportunity to work closely with leaders from 18 other health education professions. It's an amazing honor. Nursing, pharmacy, PA, allopathic medicine, dentistry, others. And we gather monthly, if not more often, as fellow CEOs to talk about how our communities are reacting to all of this change that's going on around us and what our organizations are doing to help navigate it. Most recently, I've been listening to their challenges and the pressure that they have felt to rethink their work. And some have made very significant changes to the content in their annual conferences in light of the landscape. But you know, I haven't been getting that pressure from this community. You haven't asked us to change direction in any way. So this conference, I think you will see, still has a full range of professional development options. No topic has been off limits, at least not yet. And you still get to choose what you want to learn and how you want to learn it. I hope there's ultimately, in your 3 days here, something for everyone. And I have my planning committee, my staff, and my board really to thank for that. And what I'd like to do before I go any further is just have all of those people stand for a moment. My staff, the planning committee, and the board. What I was supposed to say was wherever you are out there in that OME ocean, I appreciate your leadership and your work to get us here, but I just wanted to see you all stand up. We've got just such amazing support. So look, we're all concerned in one way or another about the future of education. I know we're worried about our students and how they're going to potentially pay for education, and if comms might be on the hook if they somehow default. There are some really unsettling things that are happening. And I assure you that our advocacy team is working with the comms to make sure the people in Washington hear about the implications on our institutions and on our future DOs. But realistically, this morning, there is little to be done about that from this stage and in the time that I have. I want to talk to you today about the opportunities we have. And if just to connect with one another and remember what matters to us, osteopathic medical education. And in times like this, I look for guidance. And I have turned to one of the world's great philosophers, Olaf from Frozen. That snowman in that movie has really good lessons to share. And for this one, he reminds us that in tough times, it's important to control what you can when things seem otherwise out of your control. Look, there are challenges. We have a lot of work ahead of us. But we do have control over some things as DOs and as future DOs. And we need to remember that when we face the reality of the state of healthcare in the United States.
Communities around the country have experienced a wave of hospital closures in the last 5 years, with hundreds more on shaky financial footing.
We are in a bad position where 2 of those 3 hospitals that we've always leaned on are in jeopardy of closing.
I would say across the country, when I speak to my colleagues, access is the #1 issue.
People really are struggling in terms of access to healthcare, quality of healthcare.
I was just tired exhausted and definitely burnt out. My heart hurt from everything I'd seen and worked through.
It's more than just burnout, it's moral injury and compassion fatigue.
There are still long waiting times at both hospitals and for in-home care.
We were in the ER for 21 hours before they could find a room for him because they didn't have enough beds.
People do think of America as having remarkable innovations and world-class institutions. By the same token, we also have communities where people are really suffering.
People should be able to get the treatment and the care that they need.
I couldn't agree more. People should be able to get the treatment and the care that they need. The question is why they're not and what our role is in changing that. So, I did this to you last year, and I'm going to do it again. We're going to talk about the hard stuff. And I'm going to say some things that I think need to be said. Last year, I focused this speech on the individual and the patient and on what we could do to make things better. I spoke about our contract with society. What is the state of that contract? How many of you can relate to what the hospital execs had to say? Have you experienced closures in your own areas? Especially in the rural and underserved communities where we are, that story is not an outlier. So today, I'd like to focus on the entire system and what we control within that system. The ways we, and I think only we, can help turn it around. I asked you a question last year, and I'd like to begin by asking the same question again. By show of hands, does anyone in this room think our healthcare system is working the way it should for patients and providers? I don't see any hands. I think if we're paying close attention and listening deeply, like we teach our students to do, what we're hearing is that there's a lot of pain out there. Physicians and our colleagues in healthcare are burned out. Their patients are burned out. The system is burned out. I think a lot of us in this room might even be suffering too. The uncertainty in the environment around us makes it worse. There's no question that we're facing a lot of systemic challenges in healthcare. I personally think we've hit a tipping point. Malcolm Gladwell defines this point as a moment when ideas, trends, or behaviors reach a critical mass and a transformative change is triggered. I think we are there. The question is, as an osteopathic community, what do we do? How do we trigger transformative change? I would argue that we have the tools for change already. We just need the will and the conviction to use them. Speaking of tools of change, and the deans are not allowed to answer this question, who knows when the first fax machine was developed? I promise there really is a point, and some great graphs too. The fax machine was actually born in 1848, and then it evolved. It took a long time for this first primitive machine to hit its developmental milestones. It didn't evolve as a technology just because someone thought it would be cool. It evolved because there was a need for it. It had utility. But the full potential of the technology wasn't realized until it hit a critical mass, and that took time. It took roughly 120 years. When enough people had fax machines, they became an important part of an incredibly sophisticated communication system. People couldn't live without them, and the pace of advancement became even faster. But eventually, over 175 years later, those machines didn't adapt quickly enough, and they've been largely replaced by newer technology. Now, how does this relate to us? The people in this room work or train in the very places that form the cradle of osteopathic medicine, the birthplaces, if you will. Without you, there is no profession. Osteopathic medicine was born in 1874, not too long after the fax machine. Let's go back and take a look at our roots and our own evolution. Our path to where we are today has also been slow. It took pivotal moments of adaptation and growth to get us here. And those adjustments didn't happen just because we thought they were cool. They happened because our services and our work were needed. The American public found we had utility. And today, I think we're finally understanding what our full potential could look like. If you look at this graph, you can almost think of it like this. In 1920, you had to hunt for a DO. Today, you can't help but run into one of us in any hospital in the country. You've turned out enough osteopathic physicians that we have reached our critical mass. But it would not have been possible with all the right pieces being in the right place and without the right pieces being in the right place. It took a long time for us to be something that people couldn't live without, but I think we're there. I would argue that we hold far more information and power than we thought was possible at our founding. Our tipping point has arrived. The people in this room are educating almost 30% of all future physicians in the United States. If the pace of our growth continues as expected, soon enough, more than a third will be osteopathic medical students. More than a third. Think about that. Those numbers hold weight with people who used to ignore us. It holds weight in Congress. It holds weight with state legislatures. It holds weight with hospital executives. And it certainly holds weight with patients. But only if we show them what osteopathic medicine can do for them. Prove our value, prove our utility. As an osteopathic community, we can do things now we have never been able to do before. We just need to remember who we are, especially in this time of uncertainty. And what do people often do in times like this? They go back to their roots. I am asking you today to dig into your osteopathic roots. Acknowledge them, recommit to them, and then act. To focus on what we can control. As DOs, we need to be willing to not only meet, but exceed the usual standard of physician professionalism. Now that's a loaded word, professionalism. But let me explain what I mean by osteopathic professionalism. By choosing this pathway to medicine, we have committed to advancing a specific set of principles and practices. This well-defined set of principles and practices is our roadmap. They offer us a way to help address the pain points we saw in the opening video. And they may even hold some of the most elusive answers to questions our community has struggled with for more than a century. Who are we? What do we contribute? What is osteopathic medicine? As we look to answer these questions, let's think about the foundational core competencies for medical students that were recently published. I know this document has given some of you heartburn, but there's important language in the competencies that sets an expectation for our students. Look at the last subcompetency under professionalism. What do you see? Osteopathic medical students must demonstrate the philosophy of osteopathic medicine by promoting its 4 tenets. Okay, so what does that mean? Let's begin by looking at those 4 tenets. As DOs, we understand these core principles alone do not define osteopathic medicine, but they are its central framework for practice and provide us with something distinct from our MD colleagues. Most everyone in this room should be familiar with this language. I'm going to take some liberty with the words for a moment and suggest that a plausible definition of osteopathic practice has been right in front of us since these were published. The body's a unit. The body's capable of self-regulation. Structure and function affect health. Period. Now, I'm offering this just to get us thinking. These principles, our guiding principles, cannot simply be words on paper or on a screen. They must be actions that define our work and underpin the care we provide. I told you I was going to ask you to act, and I am. Focus on what we can control. The foundational core competencies set an expectation that osteopathic medical students demonstrate the philosophy of osteopathic medicine by promoting its 4 tenets. How do we set that expectation and then hold them to it? We have to show them the way. We have to accept the sacred and inconvenient responsibility of being role models. Who are we, and what do we do? Too often, we get the response from our community of, we don't have enough data, or people don't understand how we train our students, or my favorite, I can't explain why we're different, but I just know we are. Now, I've even said those words in the course of my career, but it's not acceptable. Not anymore. Not as we achieve critical mass and reach this tipping point. 2 years ago, we gave an award to Dr. Murray Goldstein at this very event. The William D. Miller Award is for significant contributions to the osteopathic profession. At the time, I think Dr. Goldstein was at least 95 years old. This is a man who spent 40 years in the public health service. He was the first DO to ever be appointed to a commissioned medical office. He served as Assistant Surgeon General. He was also the first osteopathic physician to achieve star rank in the U.S. Uniformed Services. He was an internationally recognized expert in neurology, epidemiology, and public health. I could go on and on about his accomplishments. But does anyone remember what he said was his most significant contribution to the profession? In his words, he advertised us. He insisted people knew he was a DO. He insisted that his name badge didn't read Dr. Murray Goldstein, but Murray Goldstein, comma, DO. And he was doing that decades before there was a critical mass, during that period when you had to hunt for a DO. Yet despite our incredible growth, we must still insist on using the letters DO. If we don't market the profession like Dr. Goldstein did, how can we possibly expect the world to understand, much less value, what we do? How can we expect students to become osteopathic physicians versus just another doctor if they don't commit to practicing by these tenets throughout their career? Another lesson from Malcolm Gladwell. Words aren't enough. It's all about role modeling. Saying we are distinct isn't enough. So how do we actually live into the osteopathic tenets? How do we demonstrate them as students and educators and practitioners? And how do we ensure they guide us throughout the full length of our careers? To me, this is the most fundamental of professional expectations of the future osteopathic physician. The words are there. They are integrated into the foundational core competencies for the osteopathic medical student. But do we now, and will we, hold them to that expectation? It's important for us to recognize that the tenets don't stand independent of each other. They are intertwined, just like the systems of the body. The problem is that all too often, we fall back on body, mind, and spirit and focus on whole person care as our defining feature. It's critical, but on its own, it isn't enough. It doesn't actually lead to practicing the full breadth of osteopathic medicine. What it leads to is the practice of osteopathically oriented medicine. Now, I know some of you, maybe even many of you, will disagree with what I just said, but I think we have to say it out loud. Osteopathically oriented medicine is not unique, and it's easily reproduced, and we are all seeing it. MDs, PAs, nurses, healthcare systems, private practices are co-opting the message about whole person care all over the place as part of integrative medicine, lifestyle medicine, and functional medicine, just to name a few. We don't own that positioning, at least not anymore. So we have to go beyond that message. Taken separately, each of those four tenets has implications for patient care and for our identity. But only when they are taken together do they define osteopathic practice and transform patient care. This is our utility. You heard one of the common concerns earlier. We don't have enough data. Or, I know the value we bring to patients in the healthcare system, I just can't prove it. To that I say, yes, we can. We do have the proof. We have only to look for it. For example, I think we can agree that length of stay in hospitals is a major concern, right? Prolonged hospitalizations increase risk of errors, infections, and complications, and they drive up what? Cost. Yes, the almighty dollar. At the same time, non-pharmacological pain management remains an urgent priority, especially in light of the statistics on opioids. Extended intravenous antibiotic use, common during prolonged hospital stays, is also associated with adverse outcomes. But what role do we as DOs have to play in addressing this? I'll tell you where I think we come in. Studies suggest that osteopathic manipulative treatment is beneficial in the inpatient setting for a number of common yet costly diagnoses. Let's review the results of a few studies. In 2008, the 2008 study of hospitalized patients, the MOPSI trial, demonstrated reduced length of stay and decreased antibiotic patients who received OMT, so pneumonia patients who received OMT. I'll go into more detail about that one in a moment. A 2012 study showed that OMT enhanced immune function by increasing lymphatic flow and circulation, supporting recovery from infections. A 2015 study published in the Journal of the American Osteopathic Association reported that OMT helped reduce postoperative ileus and shorten length of stay in abdominal surgery patients. And a 2018 study found that OMT lowered postoperative pain scores, reducing the use of opioids. There are also studies suggesting higher satisfaction scores in patients receiving OMT. We could easily argue about the size and structure of these studies, but for today, I'm making an overall point. There are some patterns that emerge if you take into account the full body of evidence. It's there, the evidence is there. But despite these promising findings, we are not using OMT on a large scale to produce these benefits en masse. Why not? Because we often discount the studies as not good enough, not big enough, not published in the right journal with the right design. Sometimes it seems we hold our own studies to a different standard than the research of others that we are completely comfortable citing. Well, I say we've hit a tipping point on the research part of our work too. We're responsible for advancing the osteopathic profession through research. Imagine the impact if, as an osteopathic community, we took ownership and scaled this type of research instead of dismissing it or hoping someone else does it for us. Aren't we obligated to validate, to further validate, refute, or expand these findings? Isn't that in service to our patients? I think that a commitment to moving our own research agenda forward is part of demonstrating osteopathic professionalism. But let's take it a step further. 2 days ago, with the support of the Osteopathic Heritage Foundation, for the first time ever, AACOM brought together over 50 COM research leaders here in Texas to do 3 things. Better understand the breadth and depth of research being conducted by your COMs, determine how this work both connects with and advances the 4 tenets of osteopathic medicine, and demonstrate how AACOM can leverage research at OME institutions to elevate the national profile of the profession. To a certain extent, we have control over our own research. Whether it's done by us or done by others, it needs to be about us. I also think we can take control over our own advertising, communicate our message to people who have the power to make what we do a rational expectation of patient care. We just have to speak up. Let me show you one way we could start. Now, bear with me on this next video. I made it myself. It is a little wonky and probably just a little long. I think when it starts out, we're going to have some laughter. I hope that settles down quickly because there's a message I want you to hear. There are some unnatural movements in my AI-generated hospital executive. The hand just keeps doing this. I couldn't make that go away. The message, I think, is strong. And I also just wanted you to see that I can use AI as a little bit of role modeling. Now, I started this out with my good friend ChatGPT and crafted what I think could be a realistic exchange to leverage research on osteopathic care and the value it brings to patients and the healthcare system. So here we go.
Good morning, Dr. Cain. Thank you for joining me. As CEO and a former nurse, I am always looking for ways to improve patient care and reduce costs. I recently came across the MOPSI study, which suggests that osteopathic manipulative treatment can reduce pneumonia patients' length of stay. Can you tell me more about OMT and how it works?
Absolutely, Gabriella. OMT works by decreasing work of breathing, improving lymphatic drainage, and supporting the body's natural healing process. It helps pneumonia patients clear lung secretions more effectively and improves oxygenation. The MOPSI study demonstrated years ago that pneumonia patients receiving OMT had nearly a full-day reduction in hospital length of stay.
That's compelling. With an average cost per day for pneumonia patients at more than $2,000, a one-day reduction could lead to significant savings.
For a hospital like ours, the treatment described in the MOPSI study could save well over $1 million per year.
That is a significant opportunity. If only I had known about this years ago. How do we integrate OMT into patient care today?
I hate to admit that I don't really use OMT in my practice. If we want to start, our osteopathic medical students and residents could be a real asset. We could do some retraining for me and our DO hospitalists, and then develop an OMT pathway for pneumonia patients.
Would you anticipate any problems if we try to implement a program?
Some might argue there isn't enough large-scale data supporting the effectiveness of OMT. But the MOPSI study was a large randomized controlled trial. Some evidence indicates that patients enjoy the hands-on treatment, meaning this could also improve patient satisfaction scores.
Dr. Cain, this sounds promising. A nearly one-day reduction in length of stay, over $1 million in savings per year, and better patient satisfaction scores. It's hard to ignore. How might we explore this?
I'd suggest we start by talking with our colleagues at the medical school.
Would you set up a meeting with the dean for us? If we can improve patient care and reduce costs, that's a win-win for everyone, and a great benefit from our relationship with the College of Osteopathic Medicine.
So before I start talking again, are there any oculoplastic surgeons in the... I don't know who the guy is, but he needs a blepharoplasty. Yes, and that's AI generated too, just so everyone knows. All right, so let's think about what you just heard. Let's do the math and stretch things just a bit. If this one study had been successfully replicated and every pneumonia patient was treated with OMT over the last 17 years, how much money could have been saved across our healthcare system for this one diagnosis? Chat helped me out with this. $50 billion. That's billion with a B. That's value from osteopathic care. It's there, and it's been there all along. We just have to have the conviction to advertise our profession and deliver, explain our value, and then demonstrate it. But attention for attention's sake is not the point. It's the why that matters. We can be doing so much more for patients and the healthcare system if we stop overlooking the opportunities that are right in front of us. Now, I'm not expecting the people in this room to go out and solve the problems of the healthcare system alone. We have a partnership we need to talk about. It's my job and the job of the talented people I work with at AACOM to help you create an environment where we can solve these problems together. We have to rely on one another. Together, we can help create an environment where our students can become osteopathic physicians fully committed to the tenets of our profession, even after they've left your school and no one is grading them. I'll give you some highlights of what we're doing at AACOM as the only organization whose primary mission is to represent the interests of osteopathic medical education. Look, we had an amazing match this year. Nice results. But what we must continue to explain again and again is that behind those fantastic numbers are a group of people, both students and the people who educate them, who had to do a lot of extra work to get them there. I like to say that you have to be bilingual in the language of osteopathic and allopathic systems to enable your students to be successful. It's not fair, and it makes no sense. The roadblocks in front of our students are harmful. They weaken our healthcare system, and most of all, they hurt patients. Enough is enough. To help remove one roadblock in particular, we have recently had the FAIR Act reintroduced in the 119th Congress. This bill continues to raise eyebrows among some organizations, but we have not let up. The idea is simple. If your GME program receives Medicare dollars, you cannot discriminate against osteopathic medical students simply because they have DO on their badge. The bill is threatening to some for reasons we don't need to get into here, but we have a responsibility to fix what is broken. In this instance, to focus on what Congress can control. We have gained additional support for this legislation, and we will continue to leverage it to fix the lack of parity in the system and use other means necessary to make sure our students are treated fairly. I also want to call your attention to some coordinated communications my team is launching. The Center of Excellence will be a repository of messaging, of content, of stories that the entire profession can use to advocate for our community and our students. When you've seen one COM, you've seen one COM. That is true. But there are times when our individual voices need to coalesce and share a common message. That is what the Center of Excellence will help with. After all, we are using a collective voice and asking students to choose DO, and they are. 18 months ago, the greatest concern of the deans in this room was whether our applicant pool was sustainable. I'm pleased to report that over this past year, we have seen an unexpectedly high number of applications. So here's a snapshot of 2021, starting in white, through this year's cycle in yellow. As of January 31st, we are up 3.4% higher than last year. And actually, the most recent numbers show that to continue, so that's even better. But just like the match, behind these numbers is a lot of work. A lot of work certainly by the comms, and also reflecting a focused, evidence-based set of strategies that AACOM is executing on your behalf with your help. We've introduced new tools to help admissions efforts, including something called OTHOT. The OTHOT project uses AI technology to promote holistic admissions and mitigate bias in the process. To date, we have 10 comms who are part of the 3-year OTHOT project. 10 more committed to the next phase beginning soon, and by this September, almost half of all comms will be piloting this technology to help with the critical task of selecting who gets to be a future DO. Just like the Center of Excellence, we are focusing on what brings value consistently to every comm, no matter where they are and what their individual circumstances. We're doubling down on the importance of our osteopathic roots, and this year launched a series of OMM, OMT workshops to enhance the skills of faculty so we can do more of the role modeling I mentioned earlier. We know that COMs face challenges in this space. Having adequate preceptors is critical. Imagine the message it sends to our students to see their role models being trained and retrained on the use of their hands. We want to make it easier for you to live into the osteopathic tenets and make sure future graduates are committed to practicing them. In a nutshell, AACOM is working to reduce the headwinds you face in producing the physicians who will deliver osteopathic care and help prove its value. We are focusing on what we can control, and we do this work because we believe in our vision statement. It's the collective obligation of our small but mighty staff of roughly 50 people to do everything we can to see that vision come to fruition. DOs bring a distinct and vital perspective to healthcare. We possess a unique combination of knowledge and skills. We provide comprehensive medical education that allows our students to become fully trained physicians with unlimited licenses to practice medicine and surgery throughout the United States. Our approach emphasizes whole person care and prevention, addressing both physical and lifestyle factors that influence health. We are trained to use our hands for both diagnosis and treatment of structural problems in the body that can negatively impact health. And we've done that for over 150 years. Those are our roots. This is a unique value proposition. Yet health systems don't actively integrate the services DOs can provide. Has anyone in this room ever had a conversation like the one I generated with some help from AI? Wouldn't you like to have that conversation? Third-party payers should be knocking down our doors to get DOs everywhere to do this work, but they aren't. The NIH, no matter what administration is in charge, should be knocking down our doors and the doors of the COMs to do the kind of research I described earlier. Not just about OMT, but about research, bench to bedside, that advances the tenets of osteopathic medicine. But they aren't. Who is knocking? Patients. They're the ones demanding the kind of care we are trained to deliver. But are we fully opening the door? At the very heart of osteopathic medicine is a deep commitment to the patient. How many of you have seen with your own eyes that the osteopathic tenets directly improve a patient's outcome? Think about the stories you could share. The patient who felt seen as a whole person, whose healing was accelerated by empathy, compassion, or OMT. The patient who was finally heard, finally examined with hands and not just eyes, and finally received the care they needed. Our holistic, patient-centered approach reflects the unspoken social contract. We care for our communities, especially the underserved and vulnerable. And we have cared for them in places others haven't, and we emphasize and practice primary care when others won't. We can do things no other profession can do. The system should be knocking on our doors, but it isn't. Not yet. But here's where the tipping point comes in. This is where you come in. And Dr. Murray Goldstein, DO, said it best.
And so no matter where I was, no matter the prominence of the people I was interacting with, I insisted that they know I was a DO. And many of them had never even heard of osteopathic medicine. To them, osteopathy, well, that must be a subspecialty of orthopedics because of the word osteo. And in the evenings, when we finished the hard work in the field doing our study, I would be questioned by people, tell me of what is a DO? What is it you do? And I use the opportunity, as I say, to explain our profession. And that, to me, was the most important role I was playing, talking about who we were, who we are, and who and what we do.
As osteopathic educators, students, and physicians, it's our collective responsibility to talk about who we are and what we do, to advertise the profession. If Dr. Goldstein could commit to doing this when he was the only DO in the room, at this tipping point, it's our obligation to take advantage of his dedication and others like him, to elevate the profession so we can realize the full promise of what DOs can do for patients and the healthcare system. Demonstrating the tenets of osteopathic medicine, living them, is not just an academic exercise. We have to set the example. So together, let's pledge to conduct and champion research, advocate for policies that enable us to serve the public good, and foster a culture of osteopathic professionalism. No excuses. We have the language, the data, and the tools to do these things. And you know what? When we advertise our profession and we live into the osteopathic tenets, doors open.
Patients who got OMT took less pain medication, and they also had a shorter hospital length of stay.
We had patients that were coming to our ED like 2 and 3 times a month, and those numbers have gone way down.
We have expanded very successfully the neuromuscular medicine department, and so that is starting to become a modality that more and more clinicians are using and more patients are benefiting from.
As some of these champions started to consult our service, they then saw to see the value of the care. Whether that was through their patients feeling better, whether that was patients themselves giving feedback saying, wow, this was the first time I felt calm during this hospital stay, or oh, this is the first time my pain actually felt better.
When I hear them speak about physicians that I know are DOs and that I know really care for their patients, they made me feel like a real person. I really do see on a daily basis how it impacts patients.
Even my physician colleagues, they're interested. They want to know what OMT is. They want to know how we touch and how we interact with our patients, because they see the benefit when their patients come back to them and say, oh, that was a really great consult, that was a really great encounter.
But to me, this clinic really embodies what I think of DOs as, which is how do you wrap your arms around the whole patient, and it's not just episodic treatment.
I feel like that fills a huge need in our current healthcare system.
Having the 5 osteopathic residencies here at this hospital, it has been a great pipeline.
I find that the training programs are really good for osteopathic physicians. The last couple years, over 60% of our residents that we hire in have been DOs.
It's nice to have passionate leaders that you're working with that have values that are congruent with yours. That's like the icing on the cake or the cherry on top.
There's so much opportunity that we have to grow our program. I would love it if all programs in the hospital integrated osteopathic manipulative medicine into the care of their patients. Osteopathic care does help, and people here see it and they want more of it.
We are very excited about the growth and the additional education options that we have here. These programs, these educational opportunities benefit our kids, they benefit our families, they benefit us in continued great healthcare in our city, and we're excited to keep moving the ball forward.
I started with the tough stuff, but there's really good stuff ahead of us if we just go back to our roots, go back to who we are amidst all the uncertainty. We're not just doctors producing doctors. We have DO on our badges. And it's a badge of honor and indeed great responsibility. So in the evenings, when the hard work is done, talk about who you are and what you do. For our students and for our future, live into the osteopathic tenets and advertise the value of what DOs do. These are things we can control. That, to me, is the definition of osteopathic professionalism. And at this tipping point, it's the most significant contribution any of us can make to the profession we love. Thank you.
I'm all fired up. I'm like, yeah, let's go, Bob, you get him. That's fantastic. I'm a past president of the American Academy of Osteopathy. I'm joined here. Doris Newman, Jane Carrero, also past presidents. If I'm missing others, I apologize, but there's so many of us, so many specialists in the room. And I'm like, yeah, Bob. I was like trying to stay in my seat. I was like, get him, Bob, tell him. Show of hands, how many people here know that you can specialize in osteopathic manipulative medicine? Okay, like a 25%. How many people in this room advertise that to your students? That you can specialize that. I need more hands up. We just finished math season. Why? Because when you talk about who is going to help lead the research and lead the training of our students, I'm a family doc. I've taken care of people with heart disease, but I don't know as much as a cardiologist. I'm a family doc, I take care of women's health, but I don't know as much as an OB-GYN. But we treat osteopathic medicine as if it's not its own specialty that deserves the dedication of other specialties. And we're not filling our residencies. So I implore you, everyone should take up the mantle of integrating OMM into their care. Every residency should have osteopathic recognition and integrate it into every specialty. But at the core, we have to fill our residencies. So I implore all of you to educate yourself on what the OMM residencies are and to educate your MSPE advisors and your students so that we can fill these residencies and really put forward the mission that Dr. Cain has put forward to us today. And I just want to give him another round of applause.